Olaf, I was wondering, how often should I change my strings? And how can I tell if they're worn? Playing my violin makes me happy. Very happy. Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Ask Olaf the Violin Maker. Today I am going to talk about strings. Just so often I get asked, how do I know when I need to change strings? Or how often should I change strings? How long do strings last? And all those kinds of questions. So today I'm going to talk about the 7 telltale signs that you need new strings. So one of the biggest telltale signs that you need new strings are that the strings themselves are actually a bit dirty or grimy. So you can see like bits of rosin build up and dirt and things like that all over them, and it can't easily be cleaned. So that's reason number 1. Reason number 2 could be that that the strings are tarnished. Now, a lot of A strings on violins have aluminium winding. That winding can tarnish, and especially the aluminium wears a lot faster than some of the other strings. You might find that some of your strings are actually totally fine, but your A string is tarnished or actually kind of almost wearing off. So that would be a time that the string might need to get changed. Also, the E string quite often rusts. The third reason why you might need to change strings is a huge buildup of rosin. And now you can wipe some of the rosin off, but sometimes the rosin gets stuck in the little grooves. So the string has a very thin metal winding, and it can get stuck in between, in the grooves of that metal winding, and that can take away from the sound. The fourth reason why you might want to change strings is that the strings are stripping, and quite often they strip either around where you're playing, or they might strip at the nut or at the bridge. So that could be another reason. One of the biggest reasons to actually change your strings, and this is one of the most important things, is that your instrument may have started to sound dull. So that, you know, that kind of brilliance in the sound has just gone away. And so especially when you're performing or you've got an exam or an audition, it's so important that you're playing on fairly fresh strings. You don't want the newest strings, but you know, when you're doing a performance, so you want the strings to have worn in for a day or two, but you don't want old strings, because you can lose some of the brilliance in the sound. Another reason why you might need to change strings, which is reason number 6, is because they broke. That's a fairly that's actually a fairly good reason to change strings, because obviously it wouldn't work. Anyway, now you know some of the reasons why you might need to change strings. I'll talk a little bit about what you can do to make your strings last way longer. So the first thing you can do is cut your fingernails. Make sure you keep your fingernails cut and nice and short. The strings themselves have this winding made of very thin metal, and that will actually wear away that winding and can actually even make the winding strip. The second thing you can do to make your strings last longer is to always wash your hands before you play. That's quite amazing. I mean, you get a buildup of, like you get perspiration on your fingers, and perspiration tends to be slightly acidic, or if you enjoy salty food, it can actually contain quite a bit of salt, and that'll obviously corrode the strings. And I notice people who like a little bit more salt, I notice that their strings corrode away much faster than most other players. The third thing you can do to prevent your strings from wearing too quickly is just wipe down your strings after you play. It is super simple, it is quick. You just get a cloth and just wipe them down. And in a way, some people suggest to have a different cloth for cleaning your strings than cleaning your instrument. my personal opinion is just wash your violin cleaning cloth regularly, and that way it won't matter so much. You can use one corner for cleaning the strings and the rest of the cloth for wiping down the instrument. The fourth thing you can do to preserve your strings, or to make your strings last longer, is not to over rosin your bow. Rosin is very slightly abrasive, and it will actually wear away the strings just a tiny bit, just on the playing areas, and that will make the strings sound dull a little bit faster. Obviously, if you're performing and you need a really big sound, you might need to put that little bit of extra rosin on, but there are quite a lot of people who really over rosin the bow, and you can tell if your bow is really spitting a lot of rosin all over the top plate here, and you need to wipe your instrument more often. The final thing you can do to make your strings last longer is to make sure that the grooves, the string grooves and the grooves at the nut, firstly that they fit well so that they're not too small, and if they're too small and they're kind of biting onto the string a little bit, you will have to go to a violin maker to get them refiled and work properly. Also, to make sure that there's no sharp kinks, especially at the nut here, so that it's really nicely rounded. So when I file the nut, I just file it really beautifully round. I have a tiny thin file that I use, and I file it beautifully round. And the final thing you can do is to put some graphite into the grooves, the string grooves here at the nut and string grooves at the bridge when you change your strings. The next video I'm going to do, I'm actually going to talk a little bit about changing strings, and I'm going to do the string change challenge, which is just seeing how fast I can actually change my strings. These are the 5 things you can do to make your strings last longer. Like I said, when strings get older and don't work so well, they can start sounding a little bit dull, a little bit fuzzy. Well, if Olaf tells me to, I'm going to keep my strings clean, wash my hands, keep my fingernails short, put graphite in my bridge, and really look after my violin. I'm also going to eat less salt. It's cheaper that way. So there's lots of different styles of strings, but most strings used today are made of a type of nylon or a synthetic material, and then wound with a very fine steel, like a flat rolled steel, and just very neatly wound over the top. And when that winding comes undone, that can actually cause a very slight buzz as well. So you know the main reasons why your strings are wearing, you know how to make strings last longer. So how often should you change strings? So these, you've seen some of the telltale signs, but how often should you change strings? And the answer isn't the same for everyone, because some players will play between 5 and 8 hours a day. And players who play that much, strings may only last 1 to 3 months, and possibly even shorter. When I talked to Ray Chen, I think he was changing some E strings, I think sometimes weekly or every 2 weeks, like really regularly. And some of the other strings lasted a little bit longer, but generally, you know, strings of solos really don't last long, and they need to be replaced really often. But for most normal players, you know, you're looking at between 6 months to a year, especially hobby players. Professionals, probably 6 months or less. And if you're practicing like crazy, it's probably going to be 3 months or less. And you know, some sets of strings can be quite expensive, up to here in Australia, up to 150 to 200 over 200 Australian dollars for violins. Cellos, you know, between 400 and 600 Australian dollars. So that's quite a lot. So it's really worth looking after your strings as well as possible and try and make them last as long as possible. But they are pivotal to the way your instrument sounds. But if you notice that your instrument is sort of sounding a bit dull, a little bit fuzzy or something like that, all you might need to do is just change your strings. Anyway, that's it for now. So if you like my video, hit the like button, and also to subscribe, hit the little subscribe button, and there's a bell there as well. When you hit that bell, you always find out when I post the next video, and it's a well-known fact that people who watch my videos are just better string players. So do yourself a favor. Just kidding. Anyway, keep making beautiful music, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!